Today's devotion comes from the book of Job, and it comes from chapter 34, and it's part of what's known as the second discourse of Elihu, who is one of Job's friends. Now, you have to be careful in reading the speeches of Job's friends because there are parts of them which are basically not things we should follow because they're mistaken in their theological understanding of God. But there are still things that we benefit from and can learn from. And that includes in chapter 34, in verses 17 to 19, where Elihu is talking about the justice of God and how God is so in favor of justice that God is willing to condemn even the most powerful who are unjust or immoral. In verse 17, he says, "Shall one who hates justice govern?" And the assumption and hope is that we really hope not, because if you have someone who hates justice governing, everyone is going to suffer. Will you condemn one who is righteous and mighty, and this means God, will you condemn one who is righteous and mighty, who says to a king, "You scoundrel," and to princes, "You wicked men"? In other words, God shows no partiality, and God will clearly condemn even those who are in the most powerful positions of a society who are unethical, unjust, immoral. And then our verse for the day is verse 19, "Who shows no partiality to nobles, nor regards the rich more than the poor, for they are all the work of his hands." And this verse is a reminder that every single human being has value, from the poorest of the poor to the wealthiest citizens of the globe. In the eyes of God, they all have value and worth. And it's detrimental to a people, it's detrimental to a country when there is partiality to the nobles or the wealthy or the rich more than the poor. And I'm currently reading a book right now called Adrift. And the author, Galloway, is making the point through charts of how American life has changed over the last 60 to 80 years. And one of the ways it has changed, for example, is our tax laws now greatly favor the wealthiest 1% over the rest of the country. And we've also moved more towards individualism and away from the social contract and the social ties of churches and faith communities and service organizations. We've been moving away from those things that bound us together and growing more individual, and also widening the gap between the wealthiest 1% and the rest of our nation. And these are things that the Bible is telling us in the three passages we've looked at already this week, that God shows no partiality, and that God regards all of us as his children. We're all the work of his hands, and God wants us to be part of a society that shows justice to all.